I was gonna say, is any of the content that we've done so far useful, or is this all for real?
I don't know anymore. I mean, it's just like you guys are super active on LinkedIn and Twitter, and I don't know. Are you on any other social platforms that are like worth note for the InfoSec community?
Yeah, I mean, the rest of them are kind of hit or miss, right? Like you can hang out on Reddit and you can do other stuff, but I mean, LinkedIn, at least today, seems to be kind of the landing zone, right, for most things.
Yeah, yeah. Gerald does something with was that Simply Cyber. He's a big advocate of using and doing stuff on Reddit, and I, obviously have known about it and used it, but like for some reason I completely missed on going into that for content and like actually engaging with stuff. There seems to be an entirely different dynamic going on in there. But
I think
it's sort of like Quora, but like dark.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how else to explain it. It's like the dark net of Quora.
Yeah.
Just only touch it with Tor. Good. Yeah. I don't know. Dom, are you on anything that's anywhere else that you're finding value?
Well, I mean, I guess it sort of depends on what type of value you're trying to get for me and for us. We're trying to reach potential customers, and LinkedIn has been the best source for that. We've tried different platforms. Even Reddit is great for information and collaboration, and with what we'll refer to as our peers. But for finding customers, I struck out there. I wouldn't say our customers hang out on Reddit. So I mean, it really depends on in terms of where we're trying to get value. An area where we're seeing trying to get more traction is with YouTube. Yeah. YouTube we're seeing as well as not just being a repository for the videos we're posting on LinkedIn, but more and more of our potential customers are going to YouTube and searching for certain keywords about cybersecurity or risk management or what have you, and are looking. It's almost becoming a Google search of sorts, but from a video perspective. So YouTube's an area we're trying to hang out more as well.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, that makes that could definitely make sense. People seem to kind of want to go for like DIY on like everything now before they like even like reach out. They like want to like. I feel like it's because they want to be better empowered for the discussion that they're going to have. They want to at least come to the table with something and ask maybe the better questions. I mean, like. I built this whole studio based on a do-it-yourself, thing, and it was like because at first I was like, oh, let me go see what a light port is. Wow, $10,000. No, I don't think so. Like, how could I do this myself? And then like learning about it was like, oh, this is really neat. Like this is, and then you start learning about all the other ways that people teach and things like that. It was kind of like a stepping stone for cyber. I could see that. I haven't actually seen a lot of people come to the table and been like, hey, I saw this on YouTube or I read about this. Can we talk about this more? It's usually still just like, hey, what the hell do I do? Like,
Well, I think to Dom's point is we start putting more kind
Oh, we lost Dutch. Oh no!
It's because I know like a lot of my own people like put they'll just go listen to something at like 1.5 or 1.75 speed, right? Just to get an understanding of it quickly. And in this current environment, like I do that when I'm biking, whatever. I mean, you can do that. And at least get a grasp of whatever the topic is, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. To add to that as well, and Brian, I think you and I were chatting about this as well earlier. Was that what we're seeing as well is this that general concept of from a DIY perspective, especially with a lot of smaller organizations in which they may not feel the need to go out and procure an expert immediately out of the gate. What we're seeing is this broader trend of where they'll try to engage with some level of content first, learn from that, and then trying to apply it. I'm using this analogy that I'm seeing more and more frequently, in which it's sort of like people when they have a need for a new dishwasher. So there's a group of people who will immediately go right to the expert and have them install it. And there's another group which will watch that video on YouTube and will attempt it and will either be successful or they'll completely flood their kitchen.
Right. I've done that.
You flooded your kitchen, right? So
we literally just went through that with our dishwasher.
We don't want caviar firmly in there, Brian.
Yes, but, I will try it, mess it up, and then scream for help. That's me.
but it's an interesting trend which we're seeing, especially now, even during COVID, when budgets are truly stretched so thin, which people are wanting to try it first. And I think there's a opportunity there for greater content generation, because there's still, relatively speaking, very little content for non-technical people or non-cybersecurity people or in the business to say, okay, how do I start out building a cybersecurity program? Just using it as a high-level example. So I do see that as a trend moving forward.
There's a lot of content on, and I'm glad we're talking about content. Like, you guys both put out quite a bit. You're both very active on social. I'm just playing catch up. So like, this is great for me. Like, for folks who are out there who probably are looking, I guess maybe the one question I have that's probably relevant to this is like, I get people who are like, hey, how do I start doing this? How do I start building my brand? Everyone's always concerned about building their brand. I think more people are more concerned about how to build their brand than they actually focus on actually building their brand, which is I subscribe to the Gary V model, right? Which is just go do it. If you're passionate about something and you like it and you feel it's going to be worthwhile and you're going to give back something to the world, just go do it. And if you got haters, fine, but just get out there and talk about it. If you like it, somebody else will like it. Somebody else will find it interesting. Like, what do you guys think about that, like, kind of approach? Or is it like all like, no, we got to curate it, it's got to be scripted and high production value?
It's the genuineness, right? Everybody can. We all have kids, right? When you're 4 or 5 years old already, you can sense that, right? So just be genuine about whatever it is you are, right? And like, I think people over rotate about the word brand. There's sometimes like an association with that, and I tell people, if they're struggling, I'm like, it's just your reputation. Like, that's all brand means, right? And so you've always had one. We just now kind of put a construct around it because of social media, but you always had one, right? It just used to be what we said when Dom would leave the room, and now we can say it right here on camera to Dom. But no, all kidding aside, no, I think just get out there and do it, right? Everybody I've ever, including myself, right? You do your first few whatever videos and you're like, you look at those and you're like, oh my gosh, those are terrible.
Right.
But whatever. I mean, everybody just realizes that you just have to get out there and start doing it. And I think, Dom, in your interview with Brian earlier, I thought it was an interesting comment about that you thought you were an introvert, right? And I've had a couple of different people tell me the same thing, that weirdly, social media platforms in this sense, it's sort of a democratization, Brian, where because you it's not the same level of, we got to put Dom on stage and there's 3,000 people in the audience on day one. He's like, I've never done this. This is terrible, right?
Right.
So the reality is, like, nobody's only an introvert or only an extrovert, right? The person who, that theory would say everybody slides back and forth situationally over your lifetime, whatever, right? And so, Dom, to your comment, I thought that was very enlightening. I've had 2 or 3 people say, hey, it allows me a different voice. Like, I feel like fill in the blank on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or whatever platform they're comfortable with, they feel like they can speak up. And that's a really interesting point, because people get fixated on, I shouldn't say anything until I'm an expert. And that's a really dangerous word.
Yeah.
You have a point of view, you can, and if you can sell us what it's based on, then we can appreciate that, even if we disagree. And so I think in that sense, it's really valuable because it allows you to put out whoever you are.
Yeah. I liked when Dom said that, because like, so personal story for me, like growing up, like I still am, but a computer geek. Like, like I went outside and like did a ton of stuff, like, being outdoors in the woods and like Boy Scouts and like that whole thing. But like deep down, like I was like in front of a computer, like I was an introvert. Like, it wasn't until like I actually was in a position in my life where like I needed money because I couldn't get another job that I had to start bartending. And in Colorado, you only had to be 18 to serve alcohol. And how do you make money bartending? You got to be outgoing. Otherwise, you're not making tips. So like that was when, and I was like, 19, 20. That was when I became, or learned about becoming, an extrovert and started figuring out that scale. Because up until then, I was like, oh, I didn't know, who knows what the hell they're doing by the time they're 18. But like, I was that introverted kid. So like, I always love hearing the story of people, like you said, Dom. And then I just had Accidental CISO on, and he was the same way. He was like, I think, Dom, you even commented, it was like, or Dutch, you did. It was like, Twitter gave him the ability to be himself.
Right.
I was like, that's awesome. Like, you know, power of the internet and anything else. But I love hearing about stuff like that when people kind of realize, like, I do have something to say. And if I can find a venue and a medium to be able to say it and I'm comfortable, I'll do it. Like, that's the goal, or not the goal, but that's kind of the magic, right?
I think the bit that I'll add to that, as well, as that when we're talking about brand, in which, you know, we're past the point of having to have that perfect image. You know, people, so many people are being brought up to think, okay, well, if I don't have the right hair or the right looks, I mean, frick, I'm the testament to the opposite of that. I haven't showered in 2 days. I haven't combed my hair in over a week. So, you know, like, I really don't care about my personal appearance if it's not obvious. But you know, it's what people get fixated on is that perception of being perfect. And if they're not, you know, what they feel is, you know, perfect, then they shouldn't go out and voice themselves. And what I always tell people is that right now we're in this state of I'll refer to this almost like hyper authenticity and vulnerability. At the end of the day, you know, that whole concept of business to business, and again, this is through my purview in terms of how we engage with our clients. We don't sell our services to other businesses. You know, we are selling ourselves to other humans. Right. At the end of the day, how you make a connection is by being human, not by saying, "Oh, look how perfect my hair is," or how, you know, I can bench press 500 pounds, or what have you. You know, it's all about being authentic and being yourself. And especially in this day and age where we're all, you know, physically separated from one another, when you can really draw on that human connection, man, that unlocks some incredible magic. But you can only do that by being yourself, not a false version of yourself.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up, Don, because your wife actually called Dutch and I, and this is actually an intervention.
Cry for help.
She reached out and was like, if you can get him to just comb his hair.
just once every other day.
She's waiting.
I thought I heard a knock on my door.
No, that's, I mean, I did that. I mean, honestly, like, there was like a stretch during, and I've been working from home with SideChannel for over a year now anyway, but it was weird. Like, I was really regimented about like getting up, making it my day. But then COVID happened and I kind of like slipped in like with everybody else and was like, well, shit, if nobody else is going to do it, I mean, I'll still wear pajamas, you know? Now it's just a game. It's like, how many Zoom calls can I do wearing pajama bottoms? Like,
yeah, like I have one of my peers who literally has like the polo shirt that hangs over here and he puts it on if he feels like he needs to for a particular meeting. Well, why don't we all have one of those? I didn't realize
I feel like I needed it. Yeah, I feel like I needed
it. That's your spirit animal, right?
I got so bored in doing video meetings because at first people would just say, "Oh, why aren't you on video? Why aren't you on video?" I was like, "Well, you don't need to see me."
Right.
And no, we want to see you. I was like, "Okay, if you want to see me, sure, why not?" So I brought my inflatable pig along. Why not?
There you go. Nice. That's cool. It's funny. I actually have I collect pigs too. You know, some people like collect Americana. I have, you know, it's really good. Look it up. It's called Kohler Schwein. It's a painting of this pig, and he's all you see him is like, you know, like hooves back, legs back, and he's like over a pond. And all you can figure out and like see in the painting is like realize that he did this running start off this dock to jump into a pond. You can kind of see like the, you know, the scenery is like it's a hot day, but like, I don't know. That was my wedding gift from my wife. I'm pretty sure there's some meaning to that somewhere deep down, but I just don't know what it is yet. Anyway.
She's waiting for you to figure it out still.
Yeah. 14, 15 years. Yeah. One day. I'll get there. If you're watching, honey, and I actually make this into the edit, I'm doing this for you.
Don, what is the cyber swine's name?
Cyber swine.
Cyber swine. I like that.
Just run with that if he doesn't have a name.
If I was gonna say spider pig, but cyber swine is so much better. Funny story was that my 2-year-old, we were shopping for just for some plants for the backyard, and for whatever reason they had an inflatable pig, and my son is someone who's when he goes out he always needs to find something that he wants to get, and we found that. I was like, okay, I wasn't expecting to see an inflatable pig here at the plant store, but sure, why not? So then my son got bored of him, so now he sits in my office.
Nice. Just call him like bacon or barbecue.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I thought you said Dutch. Yeah.
Oh.
Ouch.
Oh, that's rough. All right, let's go into the bloopers reel.
I was going to say, is any of the content that we've done so far useful, or is this all?
I don't know anymore. I mean, it's just like the content piece is actually quite interesting. Like, there are a lot of people trying to figure that out, and
Yes.
what's really interesting is people who are in marketing, who've been in marketing for a long time, who are now trying to figure this out. And then there's guys like the three of us. I don't know. Raise your hands in this group if you've had a marketing job. Okay, no, neither have I. And we're figuring it out and being quite successful. And it's like you said, Dutch. It's just being authentic, right? And just authenticity. You know, like that's it. Like marketing is like, how do we make it seem authentic?
I'm not even sure you can be a modern CISO if you don't have your own podcast right now.
That's true. That's true.
Like I don't even know. So there's a plethora of content, but it's an interesting kind of perfect storm because to your point, like everybody's home, right? And none of us are traveling. None of us are doing all the internal meetings, the board meetings, and the events, right? That normally pull us away. So in a weird way, people are like, you're seeing people's creativity. Maybe that was not evident before, right? So we sort of, when people ask me about, technology engineers and just in general, right? Whether they're network engineer or security engineer, whatever. And I'm like, well, it's interesting because there's sort of like a layperson might think of them as being this hyper introvert, super, technical. And that's, of course, that some part of that is probably true. But also like a lot of them, if they've ever written code, they see them, they're creatives.
Right.
I know they don't sort of pitch it that way, but they really are.
Sure.
They're and so this is just another way for people to kind of bring that out is hey, we're in this environment where Dom's trapped in that room maybe in perpetuity. Who knows with that lock? But so you might as well get your message out there, whatever that is.
Developers definitely are creative, and I think people probably overlook that in engineering as somebody who's not creative. But you're right, like their creativity is just an outlet of problem solving, right? An artist sees a blank canvas. Their problem solving is let me take what's in my head and put this onto the canvas. That's their problem solving. Engineering or developers, it's the same thing. Like, I need to build this functionality and this capability in this application. How do I get there? And there's 1,000 different languages you can pick from. There's 1,000 different methods and calls that you can make within that code to be able to get there. It's up to that person to be able to figure out what's the way I want to go with it. So yeah, you're right. I mean, that's a great observation. I'm going to steal that somehow and make that into my resume. We get Labor Day, so Americans actually are taking the day off because of work. You guys get Monday off?
Yeah. I mean, and not to make it obvious that how ignorant Americans are, but we have Labor Day as well. So.
But you spell it with a U. You spell it wrong.
We spell it the proper English way.
No, you Canadians, right? Half the time you're like a smorgasbord. You're like, I want some from column A, so I'll do proper British sometimes, and then occasionally I'll steal from my southern neighbor, and then a third case, column C is like you just make something up.
Yeah, well, that's Quebecois.
Like,
that's all just made up.
Totally. And you're like, you grab your toque, and you're like, your what? The what? Is that a coat? What is that? Oh, it's a hat. Okay, got it. Nobody else says that. Thank you.
I do love Canada though. Dom and I actually talked about this because I'm a fan of Banff and Vancouver in that space, so I can't knock it too much. But I can knock Quebec just because Quebec.
They're different.
They are different. It's an entirely different. I mean, they were settled by a different group. They they ran their own thing. I mean, have you ever been to Montreal? Holy cow! It's like another universe.
Quebec is the Texas of Canada.
Oh. I love that. We're gonna get Alan Alford on here and see what he says about anybody else being the Texas of anything. Texas is the Texas of Texas. That's what's going on there. I just talked to him this morning. Actually, he I don't know if you guys I forget if either one of you guys made the CISO social hour we did, but he really liked that. He came on. I gotta somehow cajole both of you to come do that. I mean, I forget how much I paid you to show up on this one. But how much ever I got to figure out to pay you to come to the big group, that would be cool. But he actually, on the sense of content, Alan kind of came back and was like, this is filling in the gap of the networking and the happy hour that happens at the end of the conference. And that was kind of like my pitch to like, hey, let's do this. Like, this is a good thing. And that's what it turned out to be. Like, we had, I don't know, 30 something people just on a basic Google Meet. Everyone was civil. Everyone asked some questions, and we just chatted. Like we were all just everyone grabbed a drink and just like did that. I don't know what like. Have you guys seen anything that's going on like that, or is there like, like to get that connectivity back with people?
Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways, and sometimes to your kind of earlier comment, it sometimes it feels forced.
Right.
So then it's like,
yeah.
But if it's a group of people who like, and you get kind of the right tone, then you can do that. And I agree. We talked about this a lot. Like we're missing out on kind of what those social scientists would call the weak connections in your network, right? Where like you don't see like Dom and I don't see each other, but normally we do at RSA and Black Hat, right? So we have an ongoing, right? And so maybe Dom's in a slightly different part of the field than I am. That's ideal, right? And so if you look at the research, that's where most great ideas come from, right? Is we talk with them, and Dom's like really heavy into it, but he knows a little bit about AI, a little bit about security, but he's mostly a big data guy. Let's just pretend, right? So, but when we have those kind of hallway, normally it's a hallway conversation, right? Or outside the meeting room, or as you're walking to the brewery, those are not happening right now. And so a lot of us, I think, too, are missing that. Like, hey, what is going on in these other fields? Like, I can go sit and read, but you don't have those casual conversations, which I think we've all realized in hindsight, like we learned a lot that way. Like that's how we picked up a lot of news, like what's happening new in XYZ, field. And it just sort of happens naturally when you're at a week-long event, but it's harder. We have to kind of create not even time, but a space, like spaces for that to happen.
There's a ton learned on the fringe. I mean, like, that's it. Dom, what are you thinking? Are you seeing anything that's successful or working out and filling that void?
I haven't really seen anything that's filled that void per se. And I mean, what I've seen though is that I think there's been a greater push from people who are spending more time on social networks like LinkedIn and taking those conversations offline. There's been people who, and to Dutch's point there, who I generally will only see once or twice a year at a security conference. But now we've actually chatted more offline on Zoom or Google Meet or what have you, and we've had more frequent touch points because we're at home. We have at least some more time now, and with a couple of them, like I said, people who I used to just see once a year, and now I talk with them once a month. We've taken the time to schedule that at least during this COVID phase, and so it's I'm not sure how you fix sort of or replace that big sort of that big picture piece there, but I'm seeing it much more at sort of that mini scale where people are taking it upon themselves to make sure that they're still investing in those relationships. It's working out pretty well.
Yeah, I think something interesting you said is like replacing what we're used to doing. And what I've been seeing as a really interesting disruptor is when a lot of us are figuring out, instead of just replacing or trying to mimic exactly the way it was done and making it virtual, just doing it entirely new. Like what's going to work new? What's the new format? What's the new type of whatever? Like taking that approach. I did this with GRC. Like everyone's like, how do we make GRC better? And it's like, I got to the point where I was like, what if we scrapped it and started over and actually made it what we wanted instead of just trying to like, just stop iterating on trying to make Archer better. Because one, you're never going to do it. And two, just stop. I mean, come on. So like starting over is somewhat valuable to like get there. I feel like I've seen some tech. I was turned on to something. I won't say what it is, but I was turned on to something to beta test that basically kind of like helps you mimic the cocktail hour, where like you're like kind of like get into little groups. You can kind of like leave and then like come back in. I think you can do that if you like set the Zoom, Google Meet, whatever. And I'm just gonna like bleep myself out on all these product names when I say this. But like using any tools like that. That's the facilitator. I think it's setting the ground rules and the tone and the topic.
Right.
So like not to pitch like the social hour we were doing, but I thought the success of that was I led with, there's no vendor pitch. I'm not going to tell you about anything. We're just going to have CISOs here and we're going to invite anybody who can be professional and respectful to just come in, ask questions, talk about a couple key topics that I'll just kind of throw up there. And we'll just see how the conversation goes. Like when you meet over drinks, nobody, like when you meet for drinks after the conference, no one's sitting there with a PowerPoint on a tablet flipping through like that you've got to sit through before you can actually like suck down your first rum and coke. Like that's not happening. So how did webinars suddenly become like the status quo of like, oh, we got to sit through this pitch and then we can talk? It's like, I don't want to do that. Who wants to do that?
If you were after we had something, like this, and then we're like, oh, let's whip up a Slack channel or whatever.
Right.
And it could be, and I'm like, that's, that's that kind of motion, right? We're like, oh, we should, to Dom, to your point, like find a way to consciously, it has to be some effort. Like you got to find a channel where it's not too hard and the barrier of entry is not high, and you don't have to sit through. I mean, nobody wants to hear Hoagley again, so we don't want to hear more videos.
No, nobody wants that. My viewer ratings prove that point, by the way. I'm already drinking and it's only midday, but it's the East Coast, so.
Can we flip the mic around? What's going on with you, Brian? Like, what do you see? Because we all see slightly different, probably day to day, like slightly different interactions. Like, so what's happening with you? Not like functionally in terms of the work, but like, what do you see? Like, as I'm looking at, as we race to the finish in 2020, look at 2021. Like, what do you see as interesting stuff?
So I'm lucky to be in a couple really tight, closed Slack channels with some like really senior level people, and the insight I get out of that into like what's happening in some enterprises is just amazing. The amount of stress that CISOs in like the Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 are going through right now is incredible. There was a joke early on that like most of them felt like they were being like struck up to be amateur epidemiologists during the beginnings of this crisis, and it was because everyone was looking at them going, you know how to deal with risk, you know how to deal with disaster and incidents, like how do we deal with this incident? And it was just really interesting to see a lot of that unfold, and people just kind of like get really stressed. I mean, you want to talk about like, going through breaches is one thing. Going through a pandemic at a global scale and keeping your corporation in line, that's, God, that I don't even know what level that is. I'm not in a position where that's happening for me. I'm doing that for smaller clients, so it's minor. But like at a Fortune 1000, Fortune 500 right now, wow, that stress level has just got to be huge. So I've watched that, and it's been great to learn from, and I've tried to be a good shoulder for some of those folks as they're trying to get through it, and along with the rest of that community. So that's been really interesting to watch. I don't think a lot of people are privy to and kind of know the level of stress and the demand on the CISO and the CIO, and even some glimpses into senior leadership of some of these companies of how are we going to get this company through this? How are we going to take care of our people? How are we going to ensure that we're going to be in existence in 2021? That's been the thing I've been watching that's been really, really interesting. On the other side of the scale, it's been, and I just started teaching at Boston College on Monday, their master's course. I'm a big proponent of, obviously kids getting into and folks getting into the field. There's whole other now volume of people who want to badly break into the field and just don't know how. And the barriers are, I think some of the barriers are ridiculous, and we really got to figure it out. Hiring managers don't want to put in the actual time to make the right job descriptions, do the right interview process, to hire the right people. Two, they're kind of offshore, like not offshoring, they're outsourcing it to their HR department or recruiters to just handle it all. And those people aren't armed with what they're looking for correctly. I worked at a recruiting firm. I know that firsthand. I used to get questions from recruiters and be like, I'm looking for a Java developer. Does this resume look right? I'm like, does it say Java on there? Then no. Like that's the level we're dealing with. And then the other piece is some of these folks, trying to get in just don't know how to position themselves correctly. There's so many options that they're like, what kind of thing am I going for? Like, I don't even know how I best say I'm the right fit. So that's those ends of the spectrum. Those are the two things I've been really keen on. That's what I've been seeing. I think we'll be able to solve it. I think humans will always be able to figure out and solve problems. I think these are both solvable problems, but they're definitely something that is taking up a lot of people's time right now. A lot of people's time. And it's not necessarily beneficial. This is stuff that, you're forced to go through, right? Having to look for a job is something that you can't dodge if you need a job, right? Keeping your company afloat is not something you can dodge. But I think it's just the ways about which people are doing it. There's a real struggle going on both of those spectrum, on both ends of that spectrum. So that's my honest feedback. That's stuff I'm kind of tight to. Everything else in the middle seems kind of trivial, honestly. It seems maybe I'm being cavalier. I don't know, but I feel like those two big pain points seem to be for our community and who we're supporting. Those seem to be very, very big pain points. I don't know. Would you guys agree, or what do you guys think?
I agree with, especially with the. I want to get your thoughts on the right there with the quote unquote talent crunch. We keep hearing about that. That term is used ad nauseum. It literally makes me as sick as when my mother-in-law comes over. That term is just I disagree with it so much, but yet we keep seeing about it. We keep reading about it.
Right.
And the thing I've been trying to figure out is that because of still hiring managers that are looking for these unicorns, or is it because of HR, or is it both? And to me, it's what I'll refer to. I think this is the point you were getting at. It's still almost, I would say, a self-inflicted wound, in which I still know many cybersecurity, whatever you want to call them, managers, directors, what have you, people who are in a position to hire, and they're not willing to take a chance on new people. They say, "Oh, I don't want to be training someone." Even for the entry level roles, they're looking for people with 5+ years experience. And they're looking for these unicorns.
Yeah.
And I know people who work at these like quite big companies. They have already quite sizable teams, and their job openings, they stay open for months.
Yeah.
I know of several where they've been open for like a year plus. And when I talk to them, I say, "Well, why haven't you filled it yet? I'm sure there's people that you could fill it in." It's like, "Oh no, there's no shortage of candidates, but we can't find the right person." I was like, "Well, that makes no sense."
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Why are you saying there's a talent shortage then? So it's I still very much feel that it's an self-inflicted wound in which there's way too many hiring managers that, lack of a better term, they have their heads way too much. Let's reset that. There are too many hiring managers who are just acting like a bunch of idiots.
Yeah.
So I agree with all those things. So here's what I think the forces are at play, right? Because you got to kind of put this into context. So when the bubble burst in 2000, what happened was you got rid of internship programs, you got rid of training programs, right? It used in that era, right? I'm old, right? So when I started in the 90s, right? Like you could go to places that were well known, right? GE, Lockheed Martin. I happened to go to Arrow. Like there were big companies who had that would invest that 6 weeks or 8 weeks, over or multiple courses over time, and those immediately they went away. Those were gone, and so there was no way to get into the industry. First of all, right? Secondly, there's an over reliance on certifications.
Yes.
And really what that does is we've all been hiring managers. I mean, back in the old days, like I had an A, B, and C pile, and C was like, no way, I'm never even going to look at, like, I'm not going to get to them. And then I realized after doing that for however many months, I'm like, well, that's a terrible approach. Like, that's not going to get me like the people, right? And I flipped it around and went, okay, what am I really looking for? I'm looking for competencies, right? What are your competencies, right? What are your passions?
Yep.
Are you a self-learner? Are you motivated? All those things, none of those are about what you learned in a certification program or even frankly, probably in a formal schooling scenario, right? So is that harder to interview for? Absolutely. Do you get better results? I would suggest you do.
Yeah.
So it's a combo, right? That you have to, I think the stress though on the hiring managers, Dom, is they don't have the time. They don't have they feel like they don't have the space to go do that. Because I think certainly most F1000s, there's not an existent program for that.
Right.
So then Brian would have to be super motivated and just go do that on his own to bring in better talent. But the outcome we all know right now is we lack diversity, we lack equity, we lack inclusion, not only of all of the areas that just as humans we should do better in, we lack diversity in thought.
Yeah.
Because just keep hiring. And by the way, I'm not against certs. I don't want to make that be it's not because I'm opposed to them. I think they're totally useful in a lot of different, because there's an effort that you've put in, and there's probably a domain knowledge that you gained, right? So I don't want to downplay that they're not valuable. However, that may or may not be the right thing for this role.
Yeah. Everything's like you said, like we were talking earlier, it's a sliding scale of kind of what you need. Well, this has been good. Guys, thank you so much for being on. Thank you for taking the time away from the family and your day jobs and coming on and talking. So we'll find some more time in the future. Hopefully everyone found this exciting and interesting. If you you got any thoughts, comment down below. Hit the subscribe button. Follow us around on hashtag CISOlife anywhere in social media land. And Dom, Dutch, any final thoughts for everyone out there?
Well, I mean, we got to do this again, Brian. I think it was a lot of fun, a lot of good laughs, a lot of good information, and it was nice to be able to tolerate both of you guys for about 45 minutes. So why not try it again?
That sounds good. I agree. I agree. Dutch.
I mean,
Oh, that's a great exit.
I mean,